We're going to talk a little bit, it's probably actually going to be a lot bit, about your final project. Okay, so this is the file that is on Canvas, and it is rather vague. It's not meant to be vague, it's meant to be flexible and adaptable depending on what it is that you want to do. I'm going to show 5 to 7 examples. I've had hundreds of projects come through, and they've been between reverse engineering a toaster that hangs on the wall, which is a little odd, to a corn roaster that would roast like 750 ears of corn an hour. Okay, so it depends on what you're interested in. Some people are really interested in toast, and some people are really interested in corn. Okay, so the proposal, I'm going to go ahead and let you read it. I know you know how to read. I don't need to read this to you. Okay. Let's take a look at some examples. So I brought up just 7 examples. We call this Student 1. This was a Harley-Davidson motorcycle engine. Why did they do it? Because they had it and they were interested. And these were the deliverables that we agreed upon, okay, that were part of their proposal. So you come up with a proposal for what you want to do, and then we talk about it and negotiate and determine what it is you would have to do to get the grade that you want, and then you have to do it. And at the beginning of your presentation, you explain what you agreed to, and then your presentation includes all of the items to prove that you did what you said you were going to do. And then this person has some movies and things, and I'm not opening up the SolidWorks files itself. This is just a PowerPoint. He did some photorealism stuff. So this is a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. It's not the entire motor. It's obviously just the engine, and it's not the entire engine. It was just the rotating assembly for the most part. Stuff that moved. We'll close whatever student that was, student 1. This was an interesting one. This is a Harley carburetor, and not just a Harley carburetor. It was a 750. He was going to do a Holley 750 double pumper, but he ended up doing like a quadrajet clone because the other carburetor was on their race car or something. So this particular student had access to some pretty serious measurement tools, and he took this very seriously because he races cars, and it was something he was into. So obviously, if it's something you're into it, and you want it to be perfect, and that's what we want. So yeah, he even did a video of it back together and working on a car. Okay, he did not list his. Well, he did. He had his deliverable. His proposal was here. Here's his deliverables. Things changed. You know, the carburetor he thought he was going to do was on a race car, and so he went into his dad's shop and grabbed this one and drew this one. Okay. Let's take a look. So a carburetor. What else? This was pretty cool, and this was conceptual, which this becomes a weird negotiation because you're not measuring anything, and all of a sudden you get to just make up whatever measurement you want. But this is a Fletcher-Capstan table, and I had shown it in class several times. This is the actual table. These are $30,000. These are not inexpensive tables. They're usually found on yachts because they expand. They're a small table, and it'll seat 4 to 6, and then it'll get really big, and it'll seat 12. And there's a video. Here's a picture of a young woman. I don't know if she's opening it or closing it. But this was something that I'd played with for a while, and this particular student said, I want to figure out how that works, and I want to draw that. And so they attempted it, and they got a working assembly, but it was a lot more difficult than what they thought it was going to be, which is typically the case in everything. Okay. So this is something that's a little bit different than the rest in that it didn't exist. It was all, I don't want to say he invented it because it already existed, but he figured out how something was done and designed his own based on that. And that gets difficult because you're not reverse engineering anything, and some people really run into problems with this. This particular student I agreed on because I knew him pretty well. Oh, yeah, don't save. Okay. What else do we have? Fishing reel. Fishing reels are very popular. Deliverables, this is pretty much the norm of deliverables. They're going to disassemble the part. They're going to measure everything. They're going to create a working assembly. This particular one had 54 parts. You're going to do a mold tools. He wanted to make the reel work in forward and averse and play with appearance rendering. I think he was going to do surfaces, and he talked himself out of that. And so, he's just taking pictures, proving that he measured things, and here are the parts. And then he has a working assembly and an exploded view, and there's some video, and here's his mold tools, and here's the appearance rendering that he was playing with transparencies. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Fishing reels are popular. Fishing reels are hard. There's a lot going on in a little fishing reel. This one is not as hard to see, but it's a Homelite XL. It's an older chainsaw. He did the whole thing, but he didn't include it very well in his PowerPoint. He opened up SolidWorks. But the big thing was this plastic housing, because he was a plastics minor, and so this was all thermoform stuff. The actual, he had a video, but he took with his phone, but he did the whole thing, but focused more on the plastic housing. Let's see, what else? And why did he do that? He had a chainsaw. This particular young woman was into reloading, and she had a reloader, I think in her apartment. She was part of the adventure, I don't know what they call it. I don't know. She was a shooter. I think she was she did competitions, but she did a reloader, and it was a model, MEC 600JR. Not particularly difficult, but it was something that she had, and she was interested in it, and I think she made some small improvements to it. But here's the proposals. Disassemble, measure, model, assemble. She did an assembly drawing and reassemble, and then she had to do mold tools, and she picked a couple parts that she did mold tools for. Okay. Let's see, what else? Student 6, deliverables, an engine. Okay, this is probably at a higher level than what some of you are interested in doing. This particular student, super high achiever, and he also collected engines. So he drew this, and I don't know what this, maybe he told me. It was a particular engine he was looking for. Oh, 1948 Briggs & Stratton, WI. It was a pretty rare one. And he found one, and he modeled it. I mean, he modeled it. Working assemblies, videos. He should have done, you can do a video in SolidWorks. I don't know why he just rotated it with his, and this is me talking in the background. Yeah. So he didn't know you can do a video within SolidWorks. So, and then, put it back together and get it started. Okay, so those are just some examples of what other people have done. And this is not to say that you need to do an engine or a fishing reel or a reloader or a Harley Davidson something or a carburetor. It's just to see, and this is just within the last 2 semesters of some random ones that I clicked on. I've had people do compound bows, like I said, a corn roaster, toaster that hung on a wall. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. I've had a student do a can opener. It just depends on what you're interested in and maybe what market segment you want to focus on. So maybe there's something that you're really interested in doing and you want to do that for a job. Maybe you find something to do that you could maybe show that possible future employer, hey, look, I'm really into this and I did this. Anyway, something to think about. I have also had students who were employed. They had already agreed to go to work for a company, and they did a project for work. And they did it for me for a grade, and they got paid to do it. Now, that is not going to, not everybody's going to be able to do that. But if you are currently employed and you're doing some drafting and product development sort of design or engineering, I've had more than a dozen students, maybe maybe one a year, has actually, their project was for work. So that's something to keep in mind as well.